Welcome back. This week we're going to be talking about what sitting all day does to your body and how to fix it. First and foremost, sitting is not inherently bad, but sitting all day is something that can totally wreck your body. And a couple reasons why is because, one, we are not meant to stay in one posture all day long. So this isn't perfect. If you stayed here all day, this is just as bad as staying here all day. A couple of things that are easy tips to get you started is, one, how to sit. There is no perfect way to do that, but it'd be like changing positions, right? So I might be sitting at my desk and working a little bit more slouched over at some point in time. And then I take and I can sit a little bit taller. One of the biggest things you want to focus on is what's happening at the pelvis and at the lower back. It's not inherently bad to be here, but it's also not perfect to be here. But notice all that happens through this midsection right through here. So essentially a couple things you can think about is, when I'm sitting, am I allowing myself to actually challenge and use certain muscle groups, or am I not? And how can I switch it up? So we'll give you a couple different examples, and then we'll head out to the fitness floor and talk about things you can actively do to combat sitting all day long. First thing we'll do is talk through a few different ways you can switch it up so you're not stuck in the same position, even if you are stuck to a desk for a long period of time. Obviously, if you have access to a standing desk, that would be ideal, so you can go from a seated to a standing position while you're working. If you don't have access to that, or you're not able to do that, even just changing your positions frequently can help. So I might be leaned back for a little bit. I might scoot more towards the edge of my seat for a little bit. One of the things we typically recommend is trying not to cross your legs here or put yourself in positions where you're going to end up getting all twisted up. If you can open your hips a little bit more, it will allow you to really take and sit a little bit taller and use some of your midsection muscles to stabilize through here. That still, in an 8-hour span, is not ideal. So a couple of other ways that you can mix this up would be, one, having some type of stability ball or something else that would allow you to focus, because obviously I can't just lean back and relax or I'm going to fall off the thing. But this is another way to help mix things up. If you don't have a stability ball, you can also always just grab something to kneel down on. So a kneeling posture while I work might help. I can go both knees, I can switch it up, I can get a nice stretch to the front of my hips here. If it is a little bit more of, man, I have a hard time sitting up and keeping my posture good, you can also grab something like a lumbar roll. I have no affiliation with this company, but it's awesome. I actually had a chiropractor friend recommend this to me. You can set this up, and as you notice, when I go to sit back in my chair, it just gives me a little bit more of an emphasis to stay taller in my posture, so I can't exactly like slouch. I mean, I can, but at the end of the day, it's pushing me forward just to give me a little bit of extra help. So those are a few tips, but honestly, even if you switch it up a ton and you spend a ton of time in a desk or you're sitting a lot, there are some different exercises and other things you can do to help combat this. So let's head out to the floor and we'll walk you through what to do. All right, first things first, let's talk about what actually happens when you are stuck in a chair or sitting all day long. A lot of that is that your body is adapting to the positions it's in, right? So if I'm sitting in this position, I'm going to be shortening a lot of these hip flexor muscles and all the muscles across the front side of my hip. I'm also going to end up pretty lax through my midsection because I'm not having to really brace or stabilize. So what's interesting is a lot of people think, man, I'll just stretch my way into feeling better. And an easy quote unquote fix for this is just sit here and just like stretch my hip flexors out, right? If I'm in a hip flex position where I'm bent all day, all I have to do is come to here. It's unfortunately not quite that simple because, yes, you can stretch out and try to mobilize the front side of your hip, but if you don't have anything to stabilize, you can't really create and build mobility off of an unstable base. So step number one is actually learning how to stabilize things, how to get your body more active, how to wake up those muscles that are going to create a little bit more sturdiness for you, and then being able to activate or still use other muscle groups that maybe are not quite as active because they are quote unquote shut off from sitting all day long. Now here's the deal, muscles don't just turn on and turn off, but the reality is they do get weaker, or if they're not being used, they're not going to naturally just be active, right? So if I'm sitting down in any position all day long, I'm not actively using the muscles that extend my hips, and that's my glutes. So you hear a lot of people talk about your glutes shutting off. It's not necessarily a thing, they're just not as active, they're not having to use, so they're going to be lazier. And that's our body's way of being efficient. So whatever we expose it to, it's going to adapt to. And in this case, that's not necessarily a good thing because we don't want it to adapt to not using these muscles or anything through our midsection. So my case, or our case, would be that we would come in and say, look, why don't we stabilize things first so we can create a really strong base, we can activate things, we can wake things up, and then get ourselves into a position to where we're ready to mobilize or open the hips up or the chest and the shoulders and the spine. We have something that's going to anchor and root it down instead of just moving a bunch of things and hoping that we're mobilizing the right areas. So we'll dive in and we'll talk about each step of the process and the best way to work through these. All right, cool. Check this out. I've got a bunch of different exercises here that we're going to walk through today. And really the goal of this is to find that combination of stabilizing, mobilizing, and quote unquote activating things, right? So a lot of these exercises aren't going to just focus on stability or just focus on mobility. We're integrating them and doing them in a way that's going to allow you to really open your body up, but also stabilizing areas and combat all of the things that are going to be happening after you're sitting tons and tons of time. So first things first, you want to focus on things that will drive a little bit more stability. We're going to start with something kind of like a bird dog here. If you tuned into our last video, you saw that some of our favorite exercises for getting started with stability would be like a dead bug or a glute bridge. If you hadn't watched that video, go check it out. We'll skip past those this week and show you some other variations to help stabilize and build strength and awareness and turn things on through your midsection. First one here being a bird dog. I'm going to be on all fours, my hands are under my shoulders, my knees are under my hips. And the goal here is for me to think about bracing through my midsection. I'm going to take and reach nice and long, but focus on staying stable and strong through here. A lot of people end up really wobbly. The goal is to stay strong as if I had like a glass of water on my lower back and not really spill that out. So a lot of stability through my midsection. There are certainly ways to progress this. So you could do holds, you could do it more dynamic, but the goal is to still feel that length and tension across my midsection to help keep me stable and still. You really want to progress this, you can take and hollow out and really create more of a core type of feel to engage the front side of your midsection. Or if you want to work on stability, you can take and create more of a wide dynamic range of motion. Either way, this is a great exercise to help create balance, stability, and start to get things to wake up through your midsection. So progression from the glute bridge that we did in the last video would be something like a hip thrust. Gives you a chance to work towards something a little bit more off the ground, but still getting your hips extended and getting some of these muscles on the back of your body to wake up. So I'll slide down. I'm going to center my body about like right underneath my shoulder blades here. I like to put my arms out to the side, or I can put them kind of somewhere through here just to give me feedback. But I'm gonna have my feet out so that I'm sitting in this position. My goal is to keep my chin tucked and then to drive my hips through here without getting this big arch in my lower back. So I wanna close my ribs down, get my hips extended, and just work in and out of this position. So once again, if you wanna really feel your glutes work and your hamstrings work, you can use touching cues, or if you need help with balance, you can put your arms out. The goal is to look right down that midline of my body and really start to get my hips extended. If you think about this, this is exactly the opposite of what you're doing when you're sitting. When I'm sitting, I'm at a really hip flex position and I'm not using a lot of posterior chain muscles, where when I'm getting out of that, I need to wake some of the stuff up, build some strength, and quote unquote activate your glutes with an exercise like this. Now there are progressions to this as well. You can certainly make it a little more challenging. Really all you would need to do is take and center your feet, lift one leg up, so this is here, and you could stagger it and really drive more focus through the leg where the heel is down. This is just here for balance. Or you could even take and use a single leg variation to really make this more challenging. Obviously that creates more of a stability challenge, but it gives me a chance to isolate the strength to one side as well. But started by getting more stability and engagement on the front. Now moving into getting more stability and engagement on the back. Next thing we'll do is look at doing that side to side. Next, we're gonna work on more inner thigh, outer hip. It's a great way to create some stability and get your muscles waking up both inside of here and outside of here, so we're not just working front to back, but also able to stabilize side to side. Really, really good exercise called the Copenhagen plank. Very easy to modify based on how far out you go. This is one that I would highly recommend. Really good for inner thigh and lower abdomen. But I'm gonna take and pop up. Obviously, the further I am or closer I am to this bench, the easier it's gonna be. So I typically recommend people starting at like just above the knee. Wouldn't wanna put just your knee on here. You could also kind of work your way out and get a little bit further out. but we'll start with the most modified version. So I'm gonna get into basically a side plank here, and I'm gonna take and pop up and extend my hips forward. And now I've got that working right through here in the lateral side of my body, more through my torso. And then on the inner thighs, squeezing up top, holding here. You can put your arm up, you can hold here. This really starts to wake everything up through your midsection and gets that stability rolling. Once again, you can make this more challenging by just coming further out and then working on squeezing through here. The further out you get, the longer that lever arm, the harder that exercise is gonna be. Next, we're gonna work on the outside of the hips. So when we were in that last video we talked about, we did more of a side bridge, right? This is gonna be the same type of thing for more of this outer leg. Notice my base is on the outside of the leg instead of on the inside of the leg like with the Copenhagen plank. But because we talked about that as one of our foundational exercises in our assessment process, a progression to that or a different variation of waking up the outside of the hips would be grabbing a hip circle or a mini band, taking this thing and stepping inside of it and moving it up to about this, I don't know, 2 inches above your thighs or so. From here, I'm gonna get in a nice athletic stance. I like to put my hands on the outside of my hips and just take big steps back and forth. I can also travel a little bit more with this, or I can stay in place and I can work side to side. Now you can even get a little bit more of a tweak or a different feel for this based on where you're at in this hinge pattern. I can stay a little more upright and it will hit a different part of my outer hips than if I got into a little bit more of an athletic stance. It's going to be a little bit more challenging and involve more glute muscles. But what's nice about this is it gets us moving side to side. This is a classic corrective exercise and one that's great for warm-up drills, but if you are sitting a lot and you're not using your buns, this will wake them up pretty quick. All right, hats on backwards, so we're serious now. We've got a lot of our core stabilized and woken up. Now we're gonna get into some more active mobility. So I wanna be very clear that mobility drills should not be just like passively stretching into something. I just spent some time engaging some of these muscles through my midsection, trying to get my glutes to really fire, my hamstrings, all of these things to really wake up and work. So I wanna actively be using that to get me in and out of a stretch. So instead of just pressing through here with laxity, I wanna create some tension through this back leg and squeeze to be able to drive my hip forward. And then I wanna take and use that to get that stretch. If I'm stretching and pressing this hip into extension, but this is all relaxed, I'm not really gonna be getting that antagonist muscle pairing to where this one firing teaches this one to relax. You wanna be able to create a system to where on one side things are lengthening while the other side things are shortening, and they're doing that actively, not just passively pushing into a stretch. So the exercise here would just be a half kneeling hip flexor stretch. I'm gonna squeeze this glute and I'm gonna take and dig my toes in so I can really drive forward and then come back out. And you can work in and out of this more dynamically, but I'm never letting go of this squeeze back here, or I can take and relax it. I can also take it another step further and add a little bit more hamstring into this as well. So it kind of works dynamically and really opens the hip more. So I'll switch sides so you can see it better. You don't need the PVC pipe, it's just nice to give you something to hold on to. But I'm gonna take and squeeze this. I'm gonna drive that hip forward, and I'm actually gonna take and drive back and stretch out and squeeze the quad. So this is more of a hip flexor hamstring rocker, but I'm gonna squeeze the side that I'm not stretching so I can actively get my body used to flexing the quad, stretching the hamstring, flexing the glute and the hamstring, and stretching the hip flexor. That way, as I'm working back and forth, I'm actually opening things up and teaching my body how to stay there. Now we're gonna get a little bit more movement through the spine and really work on getting your body into more of an extended position. We'll have our hands down underneath our shoulders here. We're gonna lay flat on the mat and do what's called a press up. I'm mostly gonna relax my lower body here and take and drive my shoulder blades back and down as I take and lift my chest and my chin and I press up to the sky here. What I don't wanna do is get my hips up off the ground. So if you're in a position where you can't get that much extension through your spine, you can also just put your forearms down and slightly press up here. Or you can even take and come out in front and just slightly lift here. The more extension you get across here, the more you should feel a big stretch across the front side of your abdomen. If you really feel this isolated to your lower back and it's kind of sharp or it's stabbing you, you probably just need to focus on working through a smaller range of motion. But as you get further through it, you really want to pair this with your breath and just start to breathe and move. So big inhale, big exhale, press and extend, and really get your chest up and open up. As we talked about, the whole goal here is to get into an extended position. If we think about sitting, I am literally in the opposite. I get compact and I'm crunched up like this. So by doing a press up, it gets us to work into a range of motion that we are not spending a lot of time in, and can help us really open things up across the front. Now, another thing you can do in this prone position, or like lying on your belly position, is get some movement through the SI joint in your lower back. A lot of times people get that centered lower back tension from sitting a lot, from just getting a lot of pressure in that compact area. Now that we've loosened up your hips, we've kind of gotten your core woken up, and we've been getting into some more extension. Hopefully that gives you enough position to really get into a spot here where we can start to try to open up and get a little bit more movement through here. This is called a scorpion, where I'm gonna take and create some stability through my upper back. Once again, I can't just be lax here, because this is not gonna do a whole lot for me if I'm not stable up top. I've gotta stay strong and create an anchor up top so that I can take and really challenge myself to open up. And as you see, I can't get quite as far because I have that block up top through the stability. So I'm just working back and forth here, really creating an opportunity to try to get some movement through my lumbar spine. But also, as you notice, when I open up this way, it's really getting me extended across the whole side of my body and starting to just loosen things up. So that's another great exercise. We'll go through probably one more really good one here from a mobility standpoint, and then we'll jump into a few more integration drills and get you back to moving. This next one is called the world's greatest stretch for a reason, because it opens up a ton of different areas of your body at once. It's one that we could have left out, but it's almost too good to not toss in here, so we'll definitely use this as an option, and can be kind of plugged in as a, like, if only one thing you had to do, this would be the one to add in. So the world's greatest stretch is basically getting into the bottom of a lunge position, taking your hands and sitting them inside of that front leg. Next, you're gonna tuck your toe on the back leg. You're gonna lengthen that out, so I'm in a nice long position. Just this alone is a good stretch on my right ankle into my left hip. And what I'm really looking for next is opening up my thoracic spine by turning towards the front leg and rotating to look up to the sky. From here, you'll come back down and touch, reset, and then open up. Now, if you really wanna challenge your mobility, the ultimate goal is to sink into that hip and get your forearm to the ground, and then come back up to the sky. You're gonna exhale down, inhale on the way up, get long, and then work your way through that on each side. You can either come down to switch, or if you really struggle through that range of motion, you can stay down and do that same thing right through here and just work on opening up without that extended hip position. Why this works so well is because of all the things we've already talked about. I have to create a level of stability just to get into this position. So it challenges me to really stabilize through here. I'm getting a lot of length across the back hip, and I'm getting a lot of rotation through the upper back. So it really targets a little bit of everything. Once again, if you can only do one thing to really loosen your body up, that is the one to do. So we'll move into a last couple of exercises to help you really integrate some of this movement, take that stability, that mobility, that activation, marry it all together and start to strengthen your body so that it's a little bit more resilient to some of the sitting you're doing. Up next, we're gonna work on another spinal segmentation exercise. I'll throw it back to the first video again. That cat-cow or slow cat-cow is a good one from all fours. But if you don't wanna be down on the ground or you want something different, you can do like a Jefferson curl here with the wall helping you out. So this is something you can do away from the wall or against the wall. What I like about the wall is it gives you some feedback. So you'll take and put one foot there, go a foot's length out, and then have a nice little cushion in your knees, but try not to bend them too much. From here, I'm gonna take and get my full spine as long as I can and put the back of my head to the wall. I'm gonna start working from the top down. So if you imagine, I'm peeling things away one vertebrae at a time as I roll myself down into a nice big rounded position here, keeping my hands tight to my body. And then when I come back up, after I reach the bottom, I'm gonna tuck my tailbone underneath me first and really scoop out my midsection and re-peel everything back to the wall one vertebrae at a time. Once again, the wall helps because it gives you feedback to figure out where you're hitting first. Kind of like the segmented cat-cow or like the spine wave stuff we've done in the past. People tend to move in chunks here if they're stiff in one area or another. So it's a really nice way to be able to start to teach you how to articulate your spine better. You can also load this. So if I wanted something light, I can just take and hold it here. I start in this position, tuck my head, my upper back, my mid back, my lower back, and then reach through to get some length. Scoop at my tailbone, tuck it under, keep everything tight, and slowly peel back into the wall. Once again, you can do the same thing by just getting away from the wall and literally just doing it all right through here, rolling down. Imagine that I'm standing in like a barrel, so I'm not pushing my butt way back here. And I'm gonna roll my way back up by scooping and keeping everything tight. But great exercise, really help articulate each area of the spine and start to lengthen things out before we get into a little bit more rotation. All right, we're gonna grab a light band. I'm gonna take and hook this through the loop and pop down onto one knee. I'm gonna have my inside knee down, and I'm gonna get myself to where I am perfectly perpendicular with the rack here. Just like that same position we were in earlier, where we're in a half kneeling spot. Now I wanna anchor my lower body in so we can teach ourselves how to really create tension from this position, but also work into some dissociation with our lower body and our upper body. So first things first, I wanna sit into this front hip and really feel like I'm strong. So if somebody tried to push me over, I would got plenty of balance. I'm gonna pull that band into my midsection. And one of the best exercises you can use here is like a banded Pallof press, which is what we're about to do, to create tension and teach myself how to really stabilize in a relatively unstable position. So I'm gonna take a big breath in. I'm gonna take an exhale, press forward, and I try to keep that right in line with the inside of this front leg. Notice that band's trying to pull me here, and my goal is to stay stable. As soon as I do that, I can feel this hip fire on the back side to extend, to stabilize, and to start to brace and wake up my midsection. So it's a very good exercise to create some stability and balance. Just collectively, you're gonna exhale on the way out, inhale on the way in. Now, another progression to this, or a different variation, would be working myself in a position where I can do a little bit more movement. I'm anchoring through my lower body, transitioning through my core, and moving more through my upper body. So you can do more of a band twist from here. So same thing, I kind of sit into that hip, I squeeze on the back of that leg, I exhale, pull across, inhale, come back in. And I can really feel this oblique firing and get my body in a position where I'm dissociating between stability here and mobility up here by controlling it in the midsection. So it's like the ultimate strength progression when you start to look at really being able to use everything that's shut down, if you will, when you're sitting, because I'm teaching my body how to stabilize. I'm teaching my upper body how to mobilize. Therefore, my core has to be the part that creates that transition and that tension in between. Now, I could even flip that backwards, and I could put myself in a position where I'm just working to stabilize my upper body, and then I can take and mobilize my lower body here and work back and forth. Inside leg's always gonna be a little bit harder, so for something like this, I would probably just stay on the outside leg and then switch. But it's the same concept where one side is stable, the other side is mobile, and everything through here is the difference maker to create that block or that transition from one side being more rigid and having that tension while the other side can start to move because it's got something strong to anchor off of. And that's the key to all of this. At the end of the day, the goal for us is to make sure that we have the stability in the appropriate areas to actually mobilize the other areas that need to be more mobile. What ends up happening a lot of times is when you're sitting at that desk or sitting in a chair is you start to get really stiff through your hips, really stiff through your shoulders, and really lax through your midsection. So people end up having really tight hips, really weak core, really weak posterior chain, maybe weak through their upper back, tight through the areas that are stuck. And if you don't ever create tension and stabilize some of the areas that are, like we said, like less active when you're sitting, then you're never really gonna be able to create enough tension and a strong base or block of things to really work into some more mobility. So for example, if I'm trying to mobilize my hips and I've got nothing here, it's just moving from the wrong areas. And that's gonna create dysfunction over time, which is why when you've had sedentary lifestyle for a long period of time, it takes a little bit to kick your way out of this. Because I've got to create stability here so that movement, tension, can come from just the hip. But if I'm lacking stability, the mobility will never come. So we'll tackle one more thing, we'll do a quick recap, and then we'll get you guys out of here. Last thing that we have not tackled is what happens at the upper back, the neck, the shoulders, which is obviously very important, especially if you're in any kind of job, sedentary or not, where you're working with your hands in front of you. We want to still create some strength through your upper back, get that tension off your neck and traps. And one of the best ways to do that is to open up the shoulder. Like the hips, the shoulder is a ball and socket joint, so it should be able to move through a big range of motion. One of the best ways to do that is by grabbing a band and doing what's called a shoulder pass through or a band pass through. Obviously, the tighter I hold on to this, or the more thickness you have in the band, or the closer I hold on, the harder that's gonna be. The reason I like this with the band over using something like a PVC pipe is that the band is a little bit more dynamic, so it forces you to actually engage when you're working through, not just throwing it over and throwing it back, kind of like you see people doing. Once again, this creates stability for me to be able to mobilize, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I would just start here, work all the way over and back, and notice I'm not really moving anywhere else in my body. I'm also keeping my arms straight. If you cannot do that, totally fine. Grab a lighter band, grab something wider. The nice thing about a PVC pipe is the width. So if I can't do that with a band, I'm just gonna hold onto this as wide as I can, and I can do a more modified version. But obviously, I'm gonna run into a block if I get too tight on it. That's where the band comes into play, where even if I get a little bit tight and it starts to get tough, I can use my muscles to help work me through that nice and slow. So that'd be one, big mobility type drill, really getting your ball and socket of your shoulder opening and rotating. And then two is getting all of these middle upper back muscles to start to fire with something as simple as like a band pull apart. So you'll grab a band that's light enough, you'll fold it in half here. I'm gonna start by taking and reaching nice and long, so I'm protracting my shoulders forward. As I pull apart, I'm going to pull them out. So I'm not focused on just coming back like this, because it's gonna put a lot of tension through my traps. I'm not coming back, I'm coming wide, and then I'm really focusing on using that width to get my shoulder blades. So if you come in a little bit tighter, you can see that I'm not just coming here, I'm going wider, and as I'm doing that, my shoulder blades are moving together in a more lengthened position instead of a shortened one. So if you think about that, here are my shoulder blades. I'm not just cramming them together, I'm taking and just moving them around the backside of my rib cage in a way that gets more mobility through what's happening in here. That's a whole other video we could get into, is about scapular mobility, which is maybe something we'll save for another day. All right, quick recap. Number one, you have to create stability before you can start to create mobility. And keep in mind that you are sitting a lot, your body's gonna adapt to it. You are moving more, your body's gonna adapt to it. Our body is naturally going to adapt to the things that we expose it to. So these aren't things that you have to do all of those exercises every day. You wanna potentially just take and run through all of those, figure out where are my weak links, what are the things that I'm not as good at, what are the things that felt like I needed them more, and you can just be more intuitive with that, and then start to do those things more often. Frequency is gonna be way better than intensity. So what I mean by that is you can come in and you can do all of those exercises once, twice, maybe even 3 days a week in really quick, hard bouts or longer hard bouts. But if you switch that mindset up and you attack the weak links and do that 1 or 2 times a day and integrate those things into your routine, doing it more frequently and less intense is gonna be better than doing it less often and more intense. So you wanna sprinkle these things in, kind of like microdosing different movements. But the overall goal of this is not to do 1,000 reps, it's not to do 3. What I generally recommend is somewhere around 2-ish sets, maybe 1 to 3 if you're doing strength training. It really is dependent on each person. As far as repetitions go, you typically want to stay a little bit on the higher rep ranges, somewhere around 10 to 20 reps, because you're trying to train more tonic and postural focused muscles. We're not looking for muscle size here, we're looking for muscular endurance and function. So in that case, more reps would be a little bit better off for that. And then last but not least, if you were completely lost and you still need help, this is your cue to go hire a coach. One of the best things you can possibly do is have an outside perspective from a professional to give you insight on how to really get in touch with your body. But these things should definitely help you out. So if you saw value in this, do it more often, leave a comment below, subscribe, or send this to a friend, but we will catch you next time.